All right, here we go. 3, 2, 1.
Boom! And welcome to the Big Honker Podcast, brought to you by Dirty Duck Coffee. If your coffee sucks, it's not the duck. Try that Missouri boat ride or that summertime blend. What are you drinking now?
It's a cold brew coffee. I drink cold brew about 2. I gotta drink it earlier. Now I'm getting older. You know, I stay up at night if I drink it too late.
Speaking of getting old and stuff, just curious, did you ever try to get your Negrano or whatever that drink was called? Did you ever get that thing fulfilled where you locked it?
No.
So you've given up on that?
I'll get there. The Negroni.
Negroni, that's what it was. Yes.
Yeah. It's not bad.
With us today from the sushi capital of Arkansas, Little Rock.
Go figure.
Mr. or I guess I should say Father Stephen Gadberry. Padre, how are you today?
Hey guys, doing great. It's good to chat with y'all.
Yeah,
again.
excited about this. We totally skipped a bunch of your stuff. And so before we get into the weeds on this, I gotta know, you did American Ninja Warrior. How did all of that come about? Was there a tryout that you had to go through?
Yeah, that was a cool experience. I actually did it twice, 2018, 2020. The second time I did it was a little bit easier because I was already had my foot in the door, was an established kind of member of the group, you could say. The initial time though it's kind of a tedious process. So before there's an online application that you fill out, that is super duper long. Like it's not just, age, height, weight, what is your job, but it was probably a 30-page survey of asking all sorts of stuff about it because they want to know your whole story.
Yeah.
So it's a show, it's a business. So they want some people with a personality. Doesn't mean you have to have a big story or a crazy story, but they just want to know that you have something that people would be interested in, something unique. So you have all this, and part of that is also submitting a video of you kind of exercising, working out, showing that you can at least climb a tree, that you can at least do a little bit. You may have a cool story, but if you can't, do a push-up, then you wouldn't be good for American Ninja Warrior, And so from there, then they call a select few of those people, invite them to do the filming, and then they spend a whole night or 2 or 3 nights, just person after person running the course. And it's done at nighttime since it's dark outside. They can control the lighting better.
Right.
So we stay up all night. And you're just all in this big waiting room, and they'll call you and say, hey, so-and-so Gadberry and, in the queue or whatever, and like 30 minutes until. So then I'm waiting in line trying to warm up. And then you get one run at the course after everyone's gone through and they've seen where everyone has fallen. Then they pick people out of that and put that onto the show. So that's kind of the process.
Well, I would be a quick interview on that. They'd be like, he's got a good personality, but he can only last 3 seconds.
He can't climb a tree.
I'm more of a wipeout guy.
Right.
That's what I would like to be on as Wipeout.
Fun.
Wipeout?
Oh, I would love to do that.
With the big balls and phone.
I critique that all the time watching. I'm like, you dummy, just wait a second. Be smart here. It's got to be a lot harder than it looks.
That.
Yeah, anytime people hurt themselves and do something stupid, it's you got to laugh. There used to be one that was in China, It was China or somewhere, and it was great.
Mm-hmm. I think that was the original Wipeout. I think it's where they got the idea.
They were meaner to those people though.
Yeah,
and then the commentary was great. Yes,
that was hilarious.
Yeah, the going from Chinese to American.
Yeah, like she doesn't shave her pits and she believes in Godzilla, and then bam, knock her off the wall.
Yeah, the voiceover work was incredible on that show.
So how'd you do on?
I can jump.
Yeah, how'd you do on American? How'd you do?
I did terrible, man.
You got through a couple courses. You got through a couple exercises.
I got through the first couple of both times I got through the first one, which is like a lot of people get knocked off that, like over half, and then from there it gets narrowed down pretty drastically. The first time I did it, I got to into the fourth one, and then the second time fell off on the second. So it's pretty brutal.
Did you make the show both times? Like the airing of it?
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
So I've only seen the one. I've seen the one. I guess I saw the one where you made it the furthest.
Yeah. The first one, it was pretty exciting, man. I had a bunch of friends that went with me, some priest friends, a few nuns. So that was kind of cool. Of course, the TV company loves that for content. And That was neat. Going to the second obstacle, I thought I was going to lose it. I did a jump, and there's a cargo net, and I just grabbed it with one hand and was just hanging there. That was quite a rush, but that was fun.
Is the water cold? Because like y'all do it.
No, it's warm? Nasty. It's warm and just thick and disgusting.
Full of people have been in it. So the nuns that went with you, did they wear their nun outfit or were they like dressed normal?
yeah, they wear their nun outfit.
Did they? What do you call that? I mean, I don't know what's a nun outfit. What is it? A dress? No.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, I mean, I guess that's not wrong, but it's just kind of funny here an outfit. So we would just call it a habit. We were talking about habits earlier, but a habit is just a term for a religious garment. So like a monk's robe would be called his habit, or the nuns, like her dress, her outfit would be called a habit.
See, I didn't want to say costume, so I didn't know what it was. But so the nuns were in their church attire or school attire is what I was asking, because could you imagine? Yeah. Could you imagine?
I wasn't laughing at you. It was just kind of like, oh, I've never heard it called an outfit. But I'm just wondering, they call it a habit, and we also call habits things that we do over and over and over. And we would wear the same things every day. I pretty much wear the same thing every day, except today I'm just wearing a T-shirt.
But see,
wanted to promote our group, Mayhem Hunt. But yeah, we can talk about that later.
You're incognito though, and that's what I meant. If one of these nurses one of these nuns is attractive, and some guy's hitting on her, and what do you do for a living? I'm a nun. Be like, ooh, that'd be a buzzkill real fast.
That's just what every college age girl should say. Should tell the creepy guy to get out of a.
Yeah, I'll let you buy me a drink, but I'm a nun.
I'm a nun, so as far as it's going, buddy. So the water's nasty and just kind of soupy.
Yeah, just kind of warm and thick and crap floating in it.
Oh.
Yeah, the first one was in Dallas, for example, and it was maybe April when it was filmed, so it wasn't like hot, but it was sunny during the daytime, and the water, it's there for a couple of days, Ugh. Everybody falling in it. I'd rather jump in the water in front of a duck blind or fall off in a fish pond and instead of just that nasty water. So
do you get to practice the course before you go out, or is it all just brand new?
Or do you see somebody run
Nope. Brand new. I mean, you can see people running it. There's different TVs around where they have the closed circuit TV because they're recording it, everything. So you see the raw footage. So you can kind of mentally get a game plan, but it's not until you get there that you can actually put your hands on it.
I'm impressed watching how good a shape people are in, since I'm a shape, but I'm not in shape. And I can't imagine how hard that is. Even that little running up deal where you got to run up the
warp wall.
Yeah. Oof. That's got to be tough. How far do you think you could go, Andy? You're in pretty good shape.
Not very far.
And what about Zachary? He's in real good shape.
I don't know. Like, do you do CrossFit? Is that what you do? Is that like your primary?
Yeah. It's kind of taken a change this year. I've been cycling a ton this year, so I've been doing a little bit less CrossFit. But yeah, CrossFit's my methodology that I follow.
I don't know. Like I don't work out that way, so like I don't know that I would have the endurance to get too far into it. I think something, and I mean, like, a foot could slip, and that's going to totally just ruin your run. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, that's what happens to all those guys. Even the professionals, they make their living doing this, and they own gyms, and they just train all day, and then they fall off on the second obstacle. Like the guy who wins last year will fall off on the second one this year. That's it, you're done. And so it's just kind of a bummer. A lot of it's skill. And also a good portion of it's kind of luck, like especially some of the balance or the moving obstacles. It's, of course, timing and you need that kind of skill, but there is an element of luck where it's just kind of a bummer. It's like, it'd be nice if you could get like one strike or something.
Yes.
Maybe not 3 strikes, but like, if let's say you fell off, you could go back and restart from that obstacle, or maybe the one before it, but you were docked a time. Or let's say even the time it took you to get out of the water and get back up would still be your running clock time. Because then, of course, there'd be a motivation to get a faster time. But yeah, I would. Who knows?
What a long day for those announcers, though. Like, you're working all night long for, it shows an hour, I think, on television, but you're there for 8 hours during the night, probably?
Oh, yeah. And they're just going. They're recording live, and you hear them the whole time. And those, I don't remember the guy's name, so they got big personalities. And they're just...
Akbar Gajabijamila is one of them.
Next football player?
Yeah. and I don't know the other guy, but I know Akbar.
I glance over at it and I think, if I took care of myself and ate better,
I could do that.
No, I never thought that. I'll be honest with you, 100%. My best shape of my life. Never would have had the upper strength to do that.
Why did you transition to cycling this year?
I am doing the Leadville 100. It's a mountain bike race in Colorado in August with a few buddies of mine. Actually, with most of the guys from our hunting group. And we're doing it as a fundraiser. And I don't like to half-ass anything. I think we talked about that a little bit last time. And so if I'm going to ride the bike, like I want to ride it and do good. So for Leadville, if you finish under 12 hours, you get a belt buckle. If you finish under 9 hours, you get a belt buckle twice the size. And bigger is always better. Always. So I want the big one. So that's 9 hours. It's 104 miles total, 12,000 feet of elevation gain. So it's and it's all between 9 and 12,000 feet of elevation out in Colorado. So I mean, you guys are hunters. Maybe y'all done some out west stuff, so you're familiar with what elevation does to you. So anyhow, long story short, I'm getting ready for that. I'll still work out maybe twice a week. It's not as intense, maybe once a week, not as intense like I was doing before with the CrossFit stuff. Now it's more functional fitness, hunt prep kind of stuff, a lot of sleds, farmer carries. That's what one of the things we're putting out a program in a couple of months, maybe a month now, looking at the time, maybe a month of just hunt prep training and stuff. So we're excited about that.
Well, your hunting camp's better than most of them I know of.
What do you mean?
Most of those guys ain't doing stuff like that. How many hunt camps you go to? The guys are going to do CrossFit and stuff together, all of them.
Well, I mean, like if you're doing that big game stuff in the mountains, you need to. I mean, you don't want to stroke out and have a heart attack. Because like you said, I ski. We go skiing every year in New Mexico, and there's always like a 24 to 36 hour period where like that first day on the mountains, I'm usually pretty winded.
What about just carrying your luggage upstairs the first time?
Even carrying your luggage upstairs, like you're just like, holy cow, there's no air
Isn't
here.
it crazy?
Yeah.
Yeah, the first couple of days in Colorado when I'm rolling around like in the back of my truck in the morning, getting dressed, making coffee, I'm breathing. I'm like, damn, what's going on? Oh, yeah, I'm at 10,000 feet.
Yeah, there's no oxygen up here.
Well, that ride sure got me out of shape fast.
Yeah, right. I thought I was in good shape until that ride. If I was a professional athlete, that's where I would go in the off season. I would go to the mountains and just train. Because I think if you can get used to that and go there at 100%, you can go anywhere.
That's why Denver wins a lot of football games in the fourth quarter. They have a big advantage. Yes. I mean, they used to run the ball a lot, and by the fourth quarter, they'd wear you out. I mean, you're just not used to the elevation. And that's tough on people. And that's
especially those 300-pound linemen.
Why you always make fun of fat people?
Well, I mean, it's just not being ugly here.
No, that's very true. And in the second half, they're really wore out.
Sucking wind.
Yep, big time.
So, what is this hunt group that you're telling us about? What do you guys do? Just a group of buddies?
Just work out and hunt. Started a few years ago as just a group. We were out hunting out west, but most of the guys are, I say probably half the guys in the group are, retired professional athletes, CrossFit guys.
Yeah.
Rich Froning, he's probably the biggest name in there. So if you're familiar with CrossFit, he did all that for a number of years, won it 10 times as an individual and a champion, or as a team, individual and a team. But we got a couple other guys from Tennessee, buddy of ours from Colorado, another one out in Washington State, me here in Arkansas. But anyhow, what we're doing is taking our love for fitness, because that's kind of how we all initially met, and then we realized we enjoyed hunting together. But the big goal is whenever we go hunting, especially out west, but even here in the east, is if we see an animal, we never want our physical inability to be a limitation. So if we see a bull next ridge line over and it's in the unit, we don't want to say, we're letting him walk. I don't want to have to pack him out. And it's not like a machismo thing, but it's just like, we're going to hunt, and it kind of ups the game a little bit more.
Right.
We're all like type A. We like challenges, and also it just, I don't know, just adds another element of kind of fair chase for the animal. It gives them like, I don't know. It's humbling. It's humbling, and we like to be pushed to the limits, and we're always broken every time we go out there. But so the hunting, the training programs that we're doing is just some things that we put together over the years that we've done to get ready for hunts out there. And not once have we gone out hunting and had to stop because of the terrain or the animal or something being too far away. And we just want other guys and gals to go out in their best shape and just hunt.
Is Froning a pretty good hunter?
Yeah, he's pretty good. We're all relatively new to it. I'd say less than 8 years. I mean, which is you got some time under your belt. 8 to 10 years. We hunted a little bit growing up, but I mean, as you guys know, somebody who's hunted their whole life versus somebody who's hunted for 10 years is. I mean, you just learn every year. You learn instincts, but he's a pretty good hunter, and he's a quick learner too. Really humble, and another buddy of ours, David Curtis. He's the one who lives out in Colorado, and it's really cool. He controls basically the one of the reservoirs out there in Colorado that affects water for just a whole area of the state. It's pretty neat job. He also builds campers, NZ campers. Maybe you've seen those before, kind of on the outline or the outdoor scheme. But so David is he's just like a mountain goat. He doesn't stop. He's got a lot of hunting instincts. He's really good.
Yeah. What's the most? How far have you had to like pack out an animal?
Man, the biggest was actually a couple of years ago, and I didn't make it. Not for me. This is with those guys. Rich got a bull. It was a public land bull. It was a few miles. Nah, I don't remember the exact distance, so I don't want to make up the distance. But it was just a ton of vertical feet. It was all down at the very bottom, which is where every animal always dies. At the very bottom, as far away from the truck as possible. But yeah, I don't want to mess up the stuff or the numbers. But he's the fittest guy I know, and he said that was the hardest thing he's done physically.
Is packing out that animal?
Yeah, packing out that one.
Oof. Are you into the cold plunging? That's the flavor of the month right now. Everybody's doing the cold plunge.
Yeah, actually, I started doing that last year, and not so much because everybody else was doing it. I guess that kind of got me going. Everyone was talking about it, and I was like, hell no, there's no way I'm going to do that. I hate being wet, and I hate being cold. But also, I hate knowing that there's something that I can't do.
Yeah.
I love learning new stuff and finding my weaknesses. And so I started doing it just so that I could basically like mentally tell myself, okay, it's cold and wet. You don't like it, but you're not going to die. So I've done it. And actually a cool thing about that, there are some physical benefits, but it's helped me more mentally.
Yeah.
Than it has physically. In ministry, I do a lot of ministry, of course, but I'm with people all the time. And, a lot of times we think of ministry as being this really fun thing where the conversations are always easy and it's always like, little bunnies and easy things to talk about. No, a lot of times there's really hard conversations that you don't want to have, or like, talking with people about stuff that's not comfortable. And so the cold plunge has helped me to, like, in 3 or 5 minutes, it's over and then I'm out of the water. And that's helped me in these hard situations where I don't want to talk to people or I want to avoid a conflict, just to jump in and just know that in a few minutes it'll be over. So it's helped me more mentally like that.
Yeah, we're going to unpack that here in just a second. But I took a cold shower every morning before I went out hunting this year, and it definitely wakes you up. I felt like I had a lot more energy, but like, you're right. Like, and I think that goes to just like anything. Like, there was a Navy SEAL that gave a graduation speech at UT, and he talks about the mental aspects of just get up, make your bed in the morning, get that first victory of the day, and then all day long it's just let's tackle the next. And he said, even if you have a bad day, you come home and your bed's made. You get to start over tomorrow. So I think just from the aspect of, number one, it's gonna shock your system at 4 o'clock or 3:30 in the morning when I was getting up. So it shocks your system, and it's one sucky thing that you've got out of the way for the day. Good momentum.
Yeah, I agree. I like doing them in the afternoon when it's sunny.
Yeah, yeah.
Not at 4 of them. I'd like to talk to you guys a little bit later, maybe about. You said waking up at 3:30. I used to be a big morning guy, but I love evening hunts. I'd be curious to hear later what y'all think. Which y'all prefer, morning or evening?
Well, for waterfowl, so like we're a little bit different just because we're waterfowl based. But we always get that first flight in the morning, so they go to their body of water and then they come out to feed, and we're hunting them in the field. So for us to get everything ready for first light, I'm usually my alarm set for 3:15. I get one snooze. I hit the snooze button, and then I get up, do my cold shower, usually about 3:30, and then I try to be out the door at 4. That gets me to the lodge. It's about a 10-minute drive. I get hooked up to the trailer. Breakfast is at 4:15, and then we're rolling at 5, and then we're set up ready to go by about 6:30.
We do some.
Where do you live?
West Texas, so west of Dallas, about 3 hours.
Yeah, I've always enjoyed afternoon hunting because when I did deer hunt some when I was younger, I was scared of the dark.
Right.
I'm going to tell you right now, I don't like walking to a deer stand an hour before the sun comes up and listening to all that stuff. And you can call me whatever you want. I don't really care because I'm betting you the majority of men are just like me. They can say what they want to, but that's true.
Walking out at night, though, after the sun goes down, I can do that. But there's something about walking into the dark.
Yes.
That messes with my brain.
Yes.
At night, I'll go out in the dark. It's okay.
Yeah, if I had to, I'm the same way. And I could sit there till midnight and walk out and it wouldn't bother me. But if I have to go an hour before that sun comes up, I don't know what was overnight put in there.
Yeah.
So little fun fact about me, it's turkey season right now, and you got to get out there early for that first morning fly down or whatever. But I will find myself waiting at the pickup truck just a little bit longer than I probably should, just so that sun can just start to peak up a little bit, because when it's pitch black outside, there's mixed thoughts on if you should carry a flashlight in, because then the turkey might be able to see your light, and he'll already have kind of a reason not to come to that area because he saw something. So I tried to walk to my spot without a light if I can. So I like a little bit of sun peeking up.
But when you're with customers, if somebody's with you, you don't mind going early.
Well, see, but that's where you're wrong, because like I'm responsible for these people.
So you don't go. You wait till the sun comes up then too, even with customers.
Well, not till the sun comes up, but just to where we can kind of see what we're doing. Because, like, God forbid something happen, and I've got to be the one that has to step up. I'm responsible for these people.
You know, it would be so much fun if I knew when Andy was going to be there in the morning.
You wouldn't, because you're afraid of the dark.
I don't. But to play a sound of kids playing in a playground in the dark and just play that for somebody, that would creep the hell out of anybody. There's nothing more creepy than the sound of kids in the middle of the dark.
You are true.
Sounds like a bobcat yelling.
Yes, a bobcat screaming. One of those. I had an armadillo recently. I thought I had to change my pants. I was kind of creeping through the woods a little bit, walking real stealthily, and an armadillo probably, his primary, he's gonna hold tight until he can't anymore. So he was probably less than 3 feet away from me when he finally decided to book it and run. And I've got a pretty strong heart, but I felt like it took some years off of my life.
Those things are loud too.
Well, they're not. I mean, it's just he just took off running. I didn't know what was underneath me.
I was deer hunting,
and I couldn't see him because he's so low to the ground and the grass is so tall. So I've just got this critter scurrying along in this taller grass that I don't know what it is. And then finally he came to a clearing. I saw it with an armadillo. But
I was down by Mexico hunting one time. I was probably 17, 18 years old. And man, I heard the biggest buck in the world walking up to me. I could just hear him tromping and stomping everywhere. Well, I'm all excited. My heart's going to look down. There's a freaking armadillo eating a stick of wood.
Oh, really?
Oh, loud. But just, I wasn't expecting that.
Afternoon hunts are fun. Like if we're just doing like a fun hunt, we'll always go out in the afternoon just because it's a lot easier on you. And like if it's not a good hunt, you're like, well, at least I didn't get up at 3:30 for this.
Yeah.
So afternoon hunts are good, but it's kind of more of a relaxing time that we do as guides. You ought to come out here this fall. I know you're a busy guy, but we'd love to have you out here. We'll get you on some geese.
That'd be fun. That'd be a lot of fun.
Yeah, I mean it's not a terrible drive. What is it?
From
7,
Little
8
Rock?
hours?
How far are you to Texarkana? 2 hours?
2 hours.
Yeah, it's probably a 7-hour drive.
That's doable.
Because Dallas is 5 from you, right? 4.5.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's 7.5 hours.
Oh, yeah, that's an easy drive.
Yeah.
I'll be headed down south in a couple weeks near San Antonio. I'm going to go axis hunting.
Oh, cool. We're about 5
Yeah, I'm
hours
excited
north
about
of
that.
San Antonio. How does that work with your schedule though? Do you have to take it like Monday to Friday if you're going to go on like a hunting trip so that you can be back for your service on Sunday? Or do you have a reserve?
Yeah, that's the easiest. I have an associate pastor, but we have 6 services over the weekend, so he can't take them all. So if I'm going to be gone for a weekend, I have to plan it probably, I don't know, 4 months out to find another guy to come and help, help cover the weekend. During the weekdays, though, I'm a lot more flexible. Like a Monday to Friday, I can, not anytime I want it, but it's a lot more flexible for me to just to kind of give the stuff to him for the week, or vice versa. He just got back from a 2-week vacation that he really needed, so he took the 2-week vacation. So I took all the duties for those 2 weeks. But to answer your question, yeah, Monday through Friday is a lot easier to get away.
I got a religious question. Do you
dive in?
Do you write like my pastor? We talk about random stuff every Sunday. It doesn't ever go follow chronological or anything like most preachers do. Do you go by that, or do you go strictly from the book? Because I know the Catholics, y'all have a pretty standard protocol on a lot of things y'all do, because if you go to Catholic church very long, you're going to be skinny because there's going to be up and downs as we do at church there. Do you do you have a standard protocol, or do you get to just talk about what you want to talk about?
Well, both and. So in the Catholic Church, it's really cool actually. The Catholic Church, we follow set readings every Sunday. There's a cycle for the Sundays. It's a 3-year cycle. Every 3 years, you'll go through probably 80% of the Bible, and it repeats every 3 years. And each Sunday, you'll have 4 different passages from the Scriptures, from the Old Testament, from somewhere in the Old Testament, also the Psalms, which is Old Testament, New Testament letter, usually from St. Paul or Hebrews, Peter, John, something like that, Revelation, and then finally the Gospel, something from one of the Gospels. And so over that 3-year cycle, every Catholic church around the world will use the exact same readings. So that's kind of the structure that we follow. And I think the Methodist Church follows the same thing, but we have this structure of readings, so that's set. But the way that I preach is going to be different for the community that I'm with. And so I would have the freedom in that area. For example, where I was before I moved here to Little Rock, I had 2 churches. One was in a little college town, and the other one was in a little farming town. So the way that I preached in those two communities was different. I had the same readings, the same scripture passages every weekend, but when I'm preaching to a college professor or a doctor, it's different than the way I'm preaching to a farmer. Not because one's smarter or dumber, but the images and the analogies that I use and the way that I, try to help them practically apply the scriptures to their life will be different for the community. So there's flexibility in the structure.
Right. I mean, that you would do that regardless of, like you said, it's not that one's dumber or smarter than the other, but it's just you have to connect. You have to make sure that this message drives home in these different environments. So if it was the same for both, one of them is going to get left behind, or maybe both of them.
Yeah, exactly.
So here one of my I got quite a bit, but one of my questions is anytime, it seems like a lot of times when you talk about the Old Testament, if you talk to somebody, they're like, well, yeah, but that's the Old Testament. So it's almost like they kind of hand wave any references to the Old Testament because it's like, well, that's the Old Testament. Jesus came and that's not what we follow anymore. Well, then like, why do we even study that?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I would go to Christ himself because he said he came not to abolish the law, but to fulfill it, and so those are the words of Jesus Christ himself. And so he would, by saying that, he's saying, I'm not telling you to cut off that half of the book. I'm telling you to recognize its role in preparing all of your hearts for my coming. And it's still important for us now, even though Jesus has come, to read those scripture passages that fulfill, that foretold his coming, that prophesied his coming. Because, yes, Jesus has come, he's died, he's risen from the dead, but also, if we believe in the true mystical reality of God, that same coming of Jesus Christ happens every day. So therefore, the words of the prophecies of the Old Testament apply to you and me every single day now. because we're still waiting for Jesus coming every day in our life. And so it's not either or, but it's both and. One preparing for the other, and the second fulfilling what was foretold in the previous. So in that regard, especially in the Catholic faith, the Old Testament is very important to us. The Gospels, of course, take the most important, because that's the very words of Jesus himself. But we by no means do we cut out the Old Testament. We still recognize it, because we still know that every day we have to say yes to the Lord, and that requires us to be aware of his coming, if that makes sense.
Right. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Because I don't know, there's been different times in like Bible study where we'll be studying something, and you'll kind of I'll mention the Old Testament, and they're like, well, that's the Old Testament, like that doesn't really apply.
Yeah, a lot of times that's because can come from ignorance or laziness. Like, oh man, that's the New Testament's only about a quarter of the length of the Old Testament, so that's less reading to do, less study to do, and plus also studying and knowing the Old Testament is not just knowing the words that are there, but also the socio-political historical context going on, the religious history as well. So there's so many layers that we need to know in order to get the fullest understanding of that scriptural text, which is just a whole lot more work.
Yeah.
But it also shows the beauty and the nuance of the way God reveals himself to us.
Right. So, the Trinity, that is a tough thing to unpack, because you've got God, you've got Jesus, who is God as man, and then you've got the Holy Spirit, right? And like
you got the Father, Son, and Spirit.
And the Spirit. So like all of them are the same thing, but all of them are different. Have I got that kind of correct? Like I said,
we're heading in the right direction.
It's tough in my head but they're all three of them. Are they all in heaven? Because it says Jesus is at the right hand of God.
Yeah. Anytime we speak of God, we're going to fall short on the terms and the words that we use. And all the theology, even the scriptures themselves, they're perfect in that they're the inspired word of God, but they're also imperfect because that inspired word of God came through human authors. And so it's even the word of God, the Holy Bible is still going to fall short in helping us to fully understand and comprehend the greatness of God. So whenever we speak of a triune God, it's one of the ways that we humanly try to understand this mystery that's infinitely beyond us. We'll never understand God until eternity, until heaven, and we're in the beatific vision, seeing God face to face. Even then, God will still be mystery. But whenever we speak of the one God, three persons, so it's all God. We speak of three persons, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. It's not so much of three different objects within one box, like three little toys inside one bag, but rather it's a way that we, throughout, I say we, for the centuries, has that we've understood this relationship of who God is to himself and to his creation. As I mentioned earlier, God is love. And we do know that. That's what Scripture tells us. That's what God has revealed to us in his Son, Jesus. That's what God himself has revealed. And love, if we think of love, three would be, and not to make it like numerical or just, whatever, but three is a necessary number for pure love. Because one person, I'll try to keep it like simple and not too complicated. One person cannot have a perfect love if it's just one person, because perfect love desires to share itself. Perfect love is willing the good of the other for the sake of the other. Now, if it's just me by myself, I cannot perfectly love, because any perfect love that I have would be for myself, and that would be very selfish and greedy. It's not for the other. So then you say, okay, we'll invite another person to the party. Two people, that's going to be good. But even in that, in the limitations that we have, I can perfectly love you, but I know that all of your love is going to be reciprocated to me. So even if I can perfectly love you, there's still going to be sort of like this selfish, or there could be this ulterior motive saying, I'll love you because I know that I'm going to get it all back.
Mm-hmm.
So even between two people, it can still be very selfish, which is why a third disinterested person would be necessary to make the love perfect between the two. And so it just creates this triangle of love to where, it's saying like, I love you so much that I'm willing to give you all my blessings, even if I don't get anything back, which is where, like, if you want to think of the third person, I'm just trying to think of like images and numerical ways of doing it. St. Augustine speaks of like the thought in the mind and the reality that thought is and the word spoken. So it's, we could talk about goose hunting. Okay, in my mind, I have a concept of goose hunting. In reality, there's geese flying. Like we see that, we know what it is. And then we're talking about the goose hunting now. So there's three different elements of the same reality of goose hunting.
Right.
We just got kind of deep pretty quickly. I'll stop there.
we dove right in with both feet. But yeah, it's just anytime that the Trinity's brought up, I always kind of, I don't know. It's a tough concept to wrap my head around. And it's what's even amazing to me is that this was even conceptualized a long time ago. When you think about how like we feel like, obviously we always feel like we're smarter than the people that came before us, but like to even conceptualize this idea 2,000 years ago or however long ago it was, like that's amazing to me.
Yeah, this might be another oversimplification of just this Trinitarian theology. That's what it would be. The study of God and the Trinity is God being perfect love. So this perfect would be infinite, no beginning, no end. Like it's beyond all things. So this perfect outpouring of love would have to be an infinite outpouring of love. So then if we think with our human minds, okay, think like water. If there's an infinite amount of water, there has to be a cup that can hold an infinite amount of that blessing being poured out. So you've got an infinite giver that's giving in infinity. You have to have an infinite receiver that can receive it in infinity. But then you have to have the actual love that's being shared between the two, which would be equally infinity.
Right.
And there can't be two infinities or three infinities because that's just one thing. That's one perfection. And so that's kind of another way of like kind of understanding this ebb and flow of one God, one infinite God, three persons. At the end of the day, we'll never fully understand it. It's going to confuse us. Mm-hmm. And that's part of the reason, or maybe not part of the reason. God doesn't want us to be confused, but at least in this life, mystery is necessary for true love. Because as soon as we fully understand and grasp something, we're controlling it. We're not loving it anymore. We're in control of it.
Right.
And true love requires surrender. And that requires us, and mystery is we have to surrender in a way to mystery. We have to say, I don't understand this, but I see it in its fullness, and it's pretty freaking awesome.
Right. Now, when we get to heaven, will there be infinite knowledge on our part? Do you know what I mean? Like, will we finally understand everything that kind of escaped us down here?
I think so. I don't want to speak a heresy, but I mean, we would know things as they are because we would see reality as it is. We would see God in his fullness, and we wouldn't be able to fully understand God because we'd still be finite creatures in the presence of the infinite, but everything would be properly ordered. We would see things in the right order. Maybe that's a better way of understanding it.
Right.
For full knowledge, because we would still it's still impossible for us to fully, to be infinite because we're not. But we would understand things in the rightly ordered way. So we would love things in the right order, love things the way that they need to be loved, and have priorities where the priority needs to be. And of course, the main one is God.
Right. I want to switch gears to Father Stanley Rother because we talked about Rother. I'm still not sure on the pronunciation.
Hey, you can say either or. That's fine.
I dug into him a little bit. He's a fascinating individual. I did not. So I read that he was actually sent home because of the civil unrest, and he did not stay at home. He went right back down to Guatemala. Mm-hmm. Like he had an out.
Yeah. So we talked briefly about him last time. Here's this because this painting, which it came up. This is Father Stanley Rother from Okarche, Oklahoma. And move it over a little bit. Hey, buddy. That's my dog that just hacked, in case you heard that. Hey, I'm doing a podcast, buddy.
You got to get that loving.
Dogs are great. You got hairball, don't you, sucker? So Father, oh man, he ripped one too. Come on, buddy. So Father Stan, he's from Oak Carchie, Oklahoma. Grew up on a family farm there. Always went to church with his family. He became a priest. He flunked out of seminary actually because he struggled with the studies. He ended up going back, studying, was ordained a priest. After a few years of being in the priesthood, the Vatican, which is kind of like the headquarters of Catholic churches or the main office of the Catholic Church, asked these different churches that had extra priests or that had enough priests to get their ministry done if they would send some of their guys on mission to go into mission territory. And guys were sent all over the place. And one of the biggest places was Guatemala in this time, Central America, Mexico, but a lot of guys went to Guatemala. During that time, this was the late 70s and 80s, there was a lot of political unrest. And as you just mentioned, so let me back up a little bit. When he gets there, he brings all these things that he learned growing up. He knew how to farm, and he was good with his hands. So he taught all the people down there how to farm a lot more efficiently. He built a radio station for them so they could communicate. He could educate them. He got a clinic going. Just so many things to improve their way of living. The government hated this because the people fell in love with him because they were giving him, or he was giving them new life. Or Jesus was, but he was helping them to, even in practical ways, have new life. The government hated this because they saw him as a person of authority. People were following him, gathering around him. So the government was outing. They were just killing anybody that was a threat to them. He was put on the short list of guys to pick off, basically. And 2 different times he was run out of the country or basically forced out by the government, by the U.S. government. And family, friends, even the people down there said, go and then you can come back. Both times he left, he wasn't home for a very long time and he had to come back. That's the point that you were just making. And because his heart, he just fell in love with those people. He knew that's where the Lord had called him to go. So he's sent down there. He's run out a couple times, and he knows that his people are being killed. And it would be like a shepherd who knows that there's a wolf in the pen, but the shepherd's at home having coffee, and the wolf is just killing his sheep. So he goes back, and he's eventually killed. But yeah, he had plenty of outs, plenty of opportunities to say, oh, well, here's a justifiable reason for me to not go back. But he kept going back for love of the people and to the point of death.
That's a tough thing to do. I mean, I don't, we had talked before about, if I had that out, I don't know what I would do. And, you said something on the last podcast that you shouldn't love anything more than you love Jesus Christ. And that kind of struck me because if you put my family down here on their knees and you had a gunman to their head and the gunman said, hey, I'll let your family live, but you got to die, I would say, sign me up right now. Let's go do it right now. Mm-hmm. I cannot say that if that same situation were to occur to me and say, turn your back on Jesus Christ or I'm going to shoot your family. Mm-hmm. Man, talk about a tough predicament. But he was willing to put his money where his mouth is.
Yeah, and that's a tough one, man. I mean, love for your family is a real thing, mm-hmm. And just like, yeah. So it's important to always keep things rightly ordered, like we were talking about just a second ago, with like in heaven and seeing God, and will we know everything? Well, no, but we will love everything in a rightly ordered way. And this is the hard thing for families, is like even loving God before the family, and recognizing that even the family is a gift from that giver.
Right.
The family that we have is a gift from God. We can talk about it here on the podcast, but I tell you, if somebody breaks in the house and does that scenario that you just laid out, like it hits the blood a little bit differently.
Sure.
So how do we live that out? One of the priests, we're not married, and that's one of the beautiful things. That's one of the there's many reasons. That's one of the many beautiful reasons why we don't get married, because it Not always, because we're broken people, but it allows us to be a little bit more free with those kind of things. So if when somebody comes in that similar situation with me, like what's their leverage?
Right.
Like they're, it's like, if you don't do this, then we're going to kill you. Like, okay, I've got nothing to lose.
Right.
Like, I'm not leaving a family behind. And even my spiritual family I'm just a steward of them. God has put me as a shepherd over them. They're his sheep. And so they're not even my sheep. I mean, they are my sheep, but like ultimately they're his. And so I know he put me here to take care of them. And if my life ends, he'll put someone else here to take care of them. So in a way, we're kind of disposable in a good way. We're, by not being married, we're disposable. We can come and go, and the Lord can continue the bigger ministry through anyone else.
So when something like this happens, whenever he was called by the Vatican to do missionary work in Guatemala, can you guys say no to an appointment?
Yeah, you can. Whenever we're ordained a priest, we make 3 promises. Actually, during our diaconate ordination, which is before the priesthood, it's kind of like another level of ministry. A lot of churches have deacons, so it's like a level of ministry. We make promises. We make 3 promises. One of regular prayer. So we there's a prayer book. I've got it. It's right here beside me. It's called the Liturgy of the Hours. It's basically a collection of it's the Psalms and Scripture, but it's broken up into day-by-day format. So it's 5 different times a day that we pray these prayers. You have the morning prayer, the afternoon prayer, daytime prayer, and evening prayer, night prayers. These other times that has reflections. So we make a promise to pray. And in that way, all the priests around the world have made this promise. So it's in a very real way, at least one priest somewhere around the world is always praying. So like Paul's call to, pray without ceasing, all of us priests kind of take up that mantle together. And if I pray my little, prayers in the afternoon, a few Psalms, it's going to take me 4 minutes. Like that's not a lot of time. But if you factor in every priest around the world, as soon as my 4 minutes are over, there's going to be somebody else somewhere doing he may be doing his morning prayer somewhere or night prayer somewhere else. But so the church is always in prayer. First one is prayer. And I'm getting back to your answer. The second one is of chastity. And all of us are called to live a chaste life. If you're married, to be faithful to your spouse. If you're not married, to stay, pure until you're married, to give your spouse, the whole, all those blessings of marriage. So, but we're not married. And so we have to live chastely. I can't sleep around with women every night, even though I'm not married. And so the second thing would be chastity. And then the third thing, to answer your question directly, is obedience. I promise obedience to my bishop and his successors. So if I promise the bishop that ordained me obedience and he dies or moves, the next bishop that comes, I've already promised that I'll be obedient to him. So that being said, can he send me somewhere where I don't want to go? I mean, he could. At the end of the day, I'm a human being, and he is too. And so, I could be totally rebellious and just not do it. But that's totally against the nature of the ministry. And so he could send me. But that being said, they're not just going to send you somewhere just to screw you over. Mm-hmm. They're going to send you where you need to go and where you have talents and gifts to be used. So anyhow, that's kind of a long-winded answer to say, yeah, we could be sent. But the bishop's always take into consideration who the guy is and where they're going.
Right. So they thought Stanley was the man for Guatemala.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm. But I mean, you think about he had to have been causing a ruckus to get on the government's hit list. Like you gotta be making waves down there. You gotta be making some inroads.
Yeah, yeah.
So in that way, he was the guy.
It's really, yeah, exactly. Yeah. People, the Vatican is the church, the Catholic Church, the Vatican in particular. They call the Vatican is they call it the largest soft power in the world. And so what that means is there's no it's one of the big world powers, world leaders, but not with hard powers. And what I mean is not in a financial way. They don't do financial leverage like Russia or China or the US could, or and they don't have like fighter jets like the US or Russia are trying to do, you know. So it's like it's simply by the presence, by the presence. And so that's the importance of having a united Christianity around the world. So all of us brothers and sisters in the faith, if we stand united, no force can stand against us. And so with Father Stan, you know, every group of people needs a leader. They need someone to guide them. Even if you say you don't want to be part of an organized group, by default, a natural leader will arise out of a group. It's just how we work as animals. And by him being the leader of all those Christians in that area, the bullseye was on his back.
Mm. And it said he lost thousands of Catholics were killed during this conflict. I mean, was he picking?
It was disgusting.
Were they picking off like people that were attending his church? Like if you were caught around Father Stan, did that put a bullseye on you and your family's back?
Yeah. So it could be anybody. A lot of the people that were killed were they were called catechists, meaning like the teachers, the people who were like his assistants. And if you think of it, like that was a clever thing on their end, on the government's end. It's evil, but it's clever. So if I wanted to mess with you, I would mess with your kids.
Right.
We're not married. We don't have kids. So if you want to mess with me, you mess with the people closest to me. Mm-hmm. And down there, it was those people who were directly helping him in ministry, which is one of the reasons why he was like, I can't let my people die. I've got to go back. So by virtue of them directly helping him in his ministry and the leadership and organizing this group of people, you know, it made them vulnerable.
And that was in Guatemala, right?
Yeah.
Yep. Santiago Atitlan is the name of the place.
There's another priest that went through the same thing, I think in Colombia or somewhere in a village.
Yeah, there's been quite a number of priests throughout the centuries who've been killed. Yeah, for that reason.
That's crazy. I was in Okarche, Oklahoma last week.
Chasing tornadoes?
Yeah,
cool.
Right up there by where he was from.
They put a shrine. What was the shrine in Oklahoma City for him, or the monument?
Yeah, Oklahoma City, beautiful basilica. I was there for when they dedicated it. If anyone is in Oklahoma City or passing through, check out the shrine of Stanley Rother. You know, it doesn't matter if you're Catholic, Baptist, Methodist, Christian, or non-Christian. It's just a beautiful, beautiful place of prayer. So go check that out.
It's crazy, the old abandoned Catholic churches that you see around. We've got one at Beaumerton. There's one. It's got beautiful windows and stuff in it. And it's a shame that this is just going to deteriorate and fall in.
I would like to know if this is probably a woman question, and we always talk about women ask questions that don't have any answers. But I would like to know, like the receipts to build some of these amazing cathedrals that you see all across the world. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, what was the actual number that it cost to build these magnificent things that are still standing today? A lot of them.
Yeah. We'll never know. If you put a price tag on them, especially now, it'd be astronomical. But one of the cool things about building structures in the past, not just churches, but even government buildings and important, structures in the town halls and stuff in the city and these little villages and stuff, they took years and years and years. I mean, some of them even centuries to build, generations of families. And the beautiful thing was that in those times, everybody was poor.
Yeah.
You had a few people that were rich, but by and large, everybody was poor, but everybody worked. And so beautiful thing of those structures is that in some ways they're priceless. A practical price would be astronomical, but their true value is really priceless because every little family, they didn't have money to offer, but this person is good at cutting wood. This person is good at cutting stones. This person can lay stones, but he can't cut stones. Mm-hmm. This lady can paint. This person knows how to do stained glass. This person can do stained glass, but they can't buy the glass. And then, so everybody does their 10 cents, their offerings, their tithe. And then it's just built. Another cool thing about those structures is that they took so long that not one person could put their name on it. Mm. Now you have these big buildings and it's like Stephen Gadberry architect. Like, I'm not an architect. It'd be kind of cool, but I want my name on my building. Yeah. So everyone can see my name. And in 50 years, the damn building's gone. these structures were built 500 years ago, some of them 1,000 years ago, and they're still standing. And whose name is on it? The whole village.
Yeah.
There's a lot of beauty in that, you know.
Yeah.
We went into an old Catholic church. I think it's a Catholic church that's right at ground zero, right where they fell at, and it's an old church that's there, and it was built in the early 1700s, I think. Old stone building that'll be there for another 500 to 1,000 years or something. And I would like to know how long it took to build, because they did it on their own free time, most of them, and I'm going to say the labor cost was zero. The stained glass is what's amazing. Even the old church at Beaumerton and stuff I've been to. Me and Michelle went into an old Catholic church in Puerto Vallarta a couple of years ago, and it was just a beautiful, beautiful building. But the stained glass is absolutely amazing on it, and it's withstood hurricanes and all the different things it's went through. But you know, when they have a problem, someone has to come fix them, and I wonder who does it.
Yeah. How does that work? Like, do you just call a contractor if you have issues at your church? Or does the
ours was the one here where I'm at was built in the 70s, so it's by and large a really new building. And if we need stuff done, we'll call contractor. Luckily, a lot of people who live at the church here, or not live, who go to church here, have different construction companies and stuff like that, so they'll come and help out.
But I wonder what happens at a church like in Puerto Vallarta, which is I'm sure it's a poor church, because outside of the cartel, there's nobody there any money. But I wonder who fixes stuff like that. And I mean, we're talking about stained glass windows that's probably 200 years old.
Yeah, there's a ton of companies out there that they just specialize in, for example, stained glass, and they'll travel all over the U.S. and the world to fix stained glass windows. And then, same thing with, marble or stones and, whatever it may be. These companies who just have this radical specialization in one thing, and they'll go and do that.
The craftsmanship's amazing in that old stuff.
Yeah, we went to one in Puerto Rico. You didn't go into there, did you? The one in Puerto Rico? That was
I
in
don't
the square?
remember. I don't remember if I did or not.
It was also gorgeous. But how does that work? Because like the priest was like doing his thing, and like you had people just like walking through there.
I bet they had a place for you to put some money in the deal.
I don't know if they did or not.
That's what they did in Puerto Vallarta too. They had
Oh, really? It might have been at the front.
People like me going through the tourism are going to drop a $20 US dollar right.
I just couldn't imagine this priest trying to, carry on with his business, and now you got tourists that are just wanting to see this old building in Puerto Rico.
Yeah, it's kind of, I can see a both and, or I can see both sides of it. As a priest, and when it comes time for worship, that's the most important thing, and I want people to respect it. You know. When somebody else is having family time, I don't crash into their house and, start playing Nintendo or whatever. And, it's just, so there's some respect that we need for these sacred times, which I think by and large in our culture is lost. We don't respect the sacred anymore. We don't have reverence for the sacred. So there's that aspect. Yeah, it can be distracting for the people there praying, for the priest. But then also, it's important for me to keep in mind too that the Lord came and he called his disciples, not for those who are well, but for those who are sick. And so we believe in the power of Christ and how somebody going through, even for tourism, can come in and have a powerful, life-changing experience with God. And we have, in the faith, we talk about transcendentals. And it's not just the Catholic Church, but transcendentals are all over the place. But in particular, the good, the true, and the beautiful. Things that are good, things that are true, things that are beautiful point towards the one who is good, the one who is true, and the one who is beautiful, God, the one who creates it all. And so for these churches, for example, a tourist coming through, even if they don't know God at all, they can see a beautiful structure and they walk in and they say, oh, wow. And then something hits them deep. It causes them to be silent and reflective. And then silent reflection is necessary for hearing the voice of God. So the other side of that coin is that although it's distracting, I see the place for it because we believe in the grace of Jesus Christ working through beautiful things done well. And so people can come in and see it as a tourist, but also believe that seeds are being sown that will sprout in due time.
Yeah. I didn't think about that just from the silence aspect. I think so. We're so busy now and our mind is always racing. I think a lot of people don't have that. And like you said, if they can come in and kind of turn their mind off for just a second, maybe that could lead them in a different direction.
Yeah. I think we may have talked about silence a little bit last time.
I don't think so.
No, silence is. Does the video go up too, or just the
Yes.
audio?
Video too.
Okay, well they're gonna get a tour of my house. I'm gonna get some coffee.
You're good.
Silence is one of the biggest things now that I think it's one of the best remedies for the problems in our world today, and it's one of the most it's missing. It's one of the most important things that's missing. We are terrified of silence, and I think there's down in our heart we know that there's a reason why we're afraid, and it makes us uncomfortable because whenever we're in silence, our soul knows that that's a place of encounter with God, and every encounter with God can lead to a life-changing question. So at any moment that we enter into prayer, and this is for everybody, any moment that we enter into prayer, God could ask anything of me. And man, that should kind of scare the hell out of us.
Yeah.
You know, like Andy, like if you went to prayer, every time you go to prayer, God could say, hey, I want you to drop everything and move to Ethiopia with your family. I need you to go there for 10 years and preach the gospel. Dang. Or, whatever, that's just
Right.
an example, whatever it may be. But if we truly believe in the power of prayer and the fact that we have a living God, every time we go to pray, bro, he could ask anything of us.
Right.
And what am I going to say? And so to bring it back to the silence makes us afraid, I think, like ontologically, deep in the deepest parts of our soul, because it requires us to recognize that we're not really in control of our lives, even though we want to be and we think we are. Silence, and we fill our lives with so much noise and chaos because we know that we've lost control. We want to live with this lie that we think we're in control, but we have no control of our lives. And a lot of our lives are just rolling and tumbling out of control. But we put on this neat little facade exteriorly, while inside we're just dying this dizzying death. And silence forces us to recognize that, we're all broken. We're all broken. Man, there's so many different avenues I could go down on that. But yeah, silence is, gosh, I think it's the best remedy. People always ask me like, hey, what do I do for depression? This for anxiety, or this for my marriage problems, or this. Man, if you spend 5 minutes of silence every day, 5 minutes in silence every day, I guarantee your life will change in a week.
Yeah.
I guarantee it. And the first 4 days, the first week is going to be stupid. You're going to have a million thoughts. It's going to be crazy and chaotic. But once you get to that 8th day, there's just going to be so much peace. And then by the time you get to the end of the second week, you're going to say, I want 20 minutes a day.
Right.
How many minutes are you asking for?
5 minutes a day and just total silence.
I do that every day.
You think so?
Yeah, I get in my car all the time and I'll have the radio on or nothing.
Yeah, but you're still your mind is still stimulated because you're not going to drive your car off the side of the road. So like you're still your mind is still occupied.
So just sit in a chair for 5 minutes and don't do nothing.
It might not be at the hum of like the constant barrage of social media and the bad news that you get and to that extent, but like you're not sitting in total silence.
No, but I'll go on an average day. I'll have at least 10 minutes in the car, at least going to the lodge or homecoming, that I don't turn the radio on or nothing at all. Just
even in the car, that's that's still okay. It's not like sitting on the porch or something. But even think about hunting. I mean, I'd say more so for deer hunting than waterfowl, because usually waterfowl is a pretty social thing.
Yep.
But just think of the time. Think of how many deep thoughts or how many moments of peace you've had sitting in the deer blind.
Yeah.
I've never met a hunter that says, I'm miserable whenever I'm in the woods. I've never met one.
Yeah.
Or somebody that's fishing, or some lady that loves crocheting or sewing. Anytime you're in this quiet space in the zone, like the world, the culture and society, they talk about being in the zone. That's what I just said. Like being in the zone, that's nothing other than being a silent, sacred space. They're afraid to use God words, but it's being in the zone. It's like being in that small. It's in the small, still voice, like the small, still. Like if you think of was Elijah in the Old Testament? The storm came. He didn't hear the voice of God. The earthquake, he didn't hear the voice of God. But then it was in the calm after the storm, that he heard the still small voice of the Lord. But it's yeah. So silence.
I get a lot, like you said, like it's turkey season now, so like I get a lot of time where it's just me and my thoughts, and I'm just waiting for that bird to fire up. But like you said, it's the same as deer hunting, except you got a little bit of calling aspect to it. But like you're just there with your thoughts a lot of times, and then and then when you corrupt that by pulling out your phone to see what's going on Twitter, just so you can get all pissed off at problems that you can't solve anyway. I think that's why depression is going so high right now. I think. You don't see young boys are not outdoorsmen like they used to be. And like you said, like even just crocheting and being a housewife or something like that, where you have a craft or a task, like we're just so busy. And I think that is why depression is it's a new thing. I mean,
people didn't have time to be depressed years ago.
They didn't have time. And I mean, it wasn't going to change anything. And your survival for tomorrow was dependent on the decisions that you make for today. Like you didn't have time to be depressed. If you were going to make it to see tomorrow, you had to act.
Well, you couldn't get on a phone or something and look and see who's got something better than you. You were surrounded by people that were just like you, most likely, unless you worked for somebody really wealthy and then you saw them at your job. But most people you were with were all like-minded in the same economic stat you are. I mean,
it's just crazy that we live in a time where things have never been easier to live. We are not confronted with life or death situations like we were a long time ago, but depression is at the highest that it's ever been.
Yeah. That's it's a crazy irony. The most comfortable time that a human being can live in all of the history of humanity. And we're more miserable than we've ever been. I think there's something to that. To get back to the basics, getting rid of all this. I mean, not even getting rid of all of it, because it's all good. Like even the advancement of society and technology is a beautiful proof of God's existence. We continue to create new things. God has given us it's amazing what the human person can do. And you're going to tell me that that's just because of some random biological evolution of us from like we used to be a duck and then a monkey, and now we're humans? No. Even if things did unfold in that evolutionary way, there's a plan behind it. And yeah.
And I also wonder too, like you see the amount of Christians, self-proclaimed Christians, that's also falling at a precipitous rate. And then at the same time, you're seeing depression. It's kind of like they inverted and they're taking the same path. One's going down and one's going up, but they're going that direction in the same spike. And I think the two have to be connected.
Without a doubt. I mean, the core of Christianity is recognizing that he is greater than I. He's the savior. I'm not, and I can't save myself. And depression is, and I'm not, and I know you guys aren't either. Like we're not saying that people that suffer with depression or anxiety or any kind of this emotional restlessness, that they just need to, fix themselves. Like, all of us, certain you guys have too experienced like some hard times, and it absolutely sucks. But I would argue, at least for my part, 9 times out of 10, when I'm in those situations, it's because of dumb things that I did or good things that I'm not doing that I should be doing. But recognizing that the key principle of Christianity, self-proclaimed Christians, as you're talking about, is like recognizing that he is greater than I. He's my savior. I can't save myself. These problems that we suffer with in depression is like it's a hopelessness. And hope is one of the virtues of God that he gives us, one of the gifts of hope. When it seems like all things are lost, hope is what gives us that spiritual energy to keep going. But a lot of it comes from the fact that we think that we're in complete control of our lives and that it all depends on us and that I can save myself. And that's farther from the truth.
Yeah.
Couldn't be farther from the truth. Yeah.
Do you mind if we talk about your dad a little bit?
Sure.
You lost it. You were 8 years old when you were in your car accident. Whole family was in the car, correct?
Everyone except for my mom. So dad, two sisters, and myself.
And you lost your father and a sister.
Yeah, older sister. Yeah.
And I mean, you know, that do you look back on that time and, you know, does it strengthen your faith, or is that one of those things where you're like, why was this taken from me at a young age?
Yeah, good question. So actually, just this past Sunday, May 5th, was the 30th anniversary of that. So it's really fresh on my mind. I've been thinking a lot about it. But overall, it's deepened my faith, and it's made me a better human being. Now that doesn't. I'm not saying, oh, it's all okay because it's made me a better human being. But it's just like a little nod to Jesus. Like he can do. You can give him crap and he can make some really amazing things. God doesn't want bad things to happen, but he can bring good things out of bad. So it's never really created a crisis of faith in me. It's affected my relationship with God in some ways. We were talking earlier about the Trinity, the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. And I don't have much relationship with God the Father. Whenever I pray, very rarely is it, you know, Father God, or, you know, praying to God the Father. Usually it's just Jesus I'm talking to. Because that father figure, it's almost, I feel a closer relationship to Jesus as a peer rather than the father as my, you know, father figure, because mine was absent my whole life. And so spiritually it's affected me in that way, because it's like, you know, in some ways, like I will feel a despair with God, like feeling that sometimes I feel like I'm more of just his employee than his beloved son.
Mm-hmm.
I'll bust my ass in the vineyard, man. I will work and I do a good job. And I know that pleases the Lord, but in some ways that's not good, because in some ways, like, I just need to remember that he's God, I'm not. He's the Father. He'll take care of me. It all doesn't depend on me. So that's kind of the negative way that's affected me. But I mean, it's taught me so much about obedience and trust and faith. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Yeah, and there's just a lot to unpack there. And I don't know if you have a specific follow-up question or something.
Well,
but
it's just
people
get to a crisis point. People get to a crisis point in their relationship. You know, something bad will happen. They'll go through a divorce, or they'll lose a kid, or they'll lose a parent, and a lot of times it's a make or break in their relationship with God. And you know, it's always refreshing whenever I hear a story like yours, and here you are, you've gone through this and you've come out the other side, and you know, now you're doing the Lord's work, where a lot of people might cuss God. You know, why did you take this away from me? I was 8 years old when I lost him. Like, what did I do to you that I deserve this?
Yeah,
I think.
Well, we need escape. Go ahead.
No, I think people like me get, when I see someone like you or Jay Loud or another friend of ours that's evangelist, his daughter had a horrible disease and she's better now, but they never ever gave up on God and they put more faith into it. It makes people like me realize how lucky we are. Mm-hmm. I mean, we all got a gift from God. When Jesus died for our sins, I mean, I can't imagine. I would never sacrifice one of my boys for anybody. It just ain't going to happen. Mm-hmm. And for God to love us enough to sacrifice his own son, everybody should realize that, and they don't. So when you see someone like you, an 8-year-old boy loses a dad, and you're not bitter or mad, gives people like me more hope and faith, if that makes any sense.
Thanks, brother. Yeah, thanks, man. We're terribly ungrateful. You know, we live in such a cushy world that we take so much for granted, and we're terribly ungrateful. The silence I was talking about earlier always leads me to be super aware of all the blessings I have. A lot of times in the silence, when I spend time in prayer, I'm just bitching about everything, complaining about this and that. And then before long, actually, it's kind of funny. I had a guy doing his summer internship with me a few years ago, and we were driving from one church to the other. It was about 30 minutes, and I was just complaining, man, about everything that was going wrong that day. And we're pulling in the driveway after this guy patiently listened to me for 30 minutes. And he was younger than me. He was doing an internship with me. And he said, his response, the only thing he said was, "Are you done?" And I was like, yeah, you're right. So the silence, I often begin by complaining. But then once I kind of vent it out, I realized dude, it's not that bad. And you got it pretty damn good. So quit crying, and that gratitude then leads me to generosity. So there's this connection between the silence, gratitude, and generosity. Now, to bring it to the point you're making, like when things go wrong, we, in our finite minds, for us to understand stuff, like we need reasons for everything. And so if something goes wrong, we have to have somebody to blame. And very often we don't want to blame ourselves or blame other people. And sometimes we don't know who, kind of like the story of Job, we don't have the reason right now. We just don't know why. Why is this? Why did your buddy's daughter suffer like that? Why did my dad and daughter die? Or my dad and sister die? I don't know. And there's no answer. And we hate that because we want answers.
Yes.
Because with answers comes control. And so often people will, when these problems happen, people give up on God because, well, he's this distant thing that's way out there. I can get mad at him, kick him to the curb, and it's okay, because if I kick my friends to the curb, I'm very likely going to look them face to face, and I'm going to have to wrestle or have to stand firm on my own convictions. And I know I don't want to kick them to the curb, but I want someone to blame. And if I kick them to the curb unjustly, I'm going to have to live with that. I know it's not fair, therefore I'm not going to do it. But God is God. Therefore I'll get mad at him and I'll blame it all on him. Take COVID, for example. So many people left the church during COVID because it was all shut down. Now, initially, like that first couple of weeks, none of us knew what was going on. Okay, right. Cool. So we get that. But how many people left their churches, their communities, their organizations, and never came back? And they're still saying now, 4 years later, COVID. Well, that's come and gone. And that's just your excuse for just take ownership. Just say, I don't want to be a part of that group anymore. Take ownership of it. I'm kind of turning into a rant now, but we want to blame God because we don't want to take ownership for our own actions.
Right. What that is an interesting. I've not thought about that. What are the numbers like in your specific church pre-COVID and after COVID? Have you guys pretty well rebounded in the attendance, I should say?
Yeah, thank God we really have. And the church I was at before, we came back pretty quickly. Luckily here, it's going to be a lot like y'all there. We were able to rebound pretty quickly in the South, versus some other states who were shut down for almost 2 years. It's harder in those places, but in our churches here, we're actually better than pre-COVID numbers, which is kind of cool.
Oh, really? Well, you don't.
Yeah.
We're living in a dying community, though. Like we're a very, very old community. So
yeah,
I mean that was one of my other questions was, when do you feel like Christianity was the strongest in America? Because if you look at kids my age that have a young family, there's not many of them that are attending church every Sunday. But you see the older class, the baby boomers, and even people that are the generation older, they were in their pews every Sunday.
50s and 60s, I think, were the best time in America for Christianity.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm not a big history buff. I like history, but I'd say probably, if not right at the very, very founding, where everyone was just these radical Puritans. I say radical, I didn't mean it like that. I mean, like everybody, all the early settlers were, Puritans. I would say probably one of the post-war periods. Yeah, maybe right after World War I.
Yeah.
World War II, Vietnam, like those, in particular World War I and II, I think it was noticeably strong because people realized oh crap, post 9/11, look at that. I mean, it's amazing how many people wanted to stand for the flag and go to church on Sunday post 9/11, and now they're ripping down our flags and putting up other country flags. It's that whole cycle of hard times make strong men, and strong men make soft times, or whatever whatever that is, but good times.
It's hard to find
We're in that period now where
it's just an easy time.
It's hard to find an atheist in a foxhole.
That's true.
And I don't want to, I don't want to wish my kids on, tough times or anything, but I think a lot of America would do good to have a little bit of a crisis in their face. Yeah.
And you can teach them a ton of discipline, without them suffering in a bad way. And I'm certain you're doing that. It's just basic parenting that a lot of parents aren't doing now. And what I mean is, for example, I was meeting with one of my office staff ladies it was last Friday, and her son, no, I'm sorry, it was Monday, and her son had something going on with his eye, so he was in the office with her. She and I were talking in my office, and he just walked in and just started talking to her in the middle of our conversation, and she laid into him.
Good.
She laid into him, and she said, "I'm sorry." I said, "Don't apologize. Like that's what a mother should do. That's what a father should do." And unfortunately, too many parents are their kids' best friends. Like you can be a friend when they get older, but when they're young, man, you got to be mom, you got to be dad, and that's tough. I don't have kids, and it's hard for me to discipline the kids at the school, but I do it. I can't imagine how hard that is to be a parent, and actually do the disciplining and see your kid cry because of, I was reading something yesterday or listening to a talk yesterday from a good friend of mine, and just shared that quote on Instagram. Like, God allows us to experience the consequences of our actions as a result of his love. And so we as parents have to do that same thing with our kids, whether it be disrespecting us, not making their beds, not doing the chores, whatever. Because if a kid doesn't learn how to make their bed without crying, or respect you and your spouse when you are talking and not interrupt y'all, how the hell do we expect them to not rob a store or shoot somebody when they get older and end up in jail? It's
right. It's all the building blocks. How you do one thing is how you're going to do everything. It's kind of the way that I look at it. You mentioned just this bitching to the intern. Is that kind of the power of confession? Is a lot of people, number one, they get to kind of voice their problems and kind of figure it out on their own. Not so much, your role in it, but it gives people an avenue to kind of just vomit everything that's gone on that day, that week, or how often they do confession.
That's a good way of putting it. Yeah, man, it's so taxing whenever we do confessions. The cool thing about that is, like, a priest is vowed, like, we're committed. Like, we cannot break the seal of confession. So we can't,
right.
I can't say, I can't go talk to my buddy and say, "Hey, Johnny, guess what? Andy came to confession yesterday, and he told me he kicked the dog 3 times last week." And
right.
that would actually, the church takes that so seriously that that's an immediate self-imposed excommunication. Like, the church wouldn't excommunicate me. I would excommunicate myself by virtue of me doing that. Like, it's such a serious thing. So I just wanted to begin by saying that, like, it's something that's so sacred, and it's very heavy, because people don't come to confession and say, "Hey, I just want you to know, like, my marriage is great and my kids are on the honor roll." They come and they say, "Man, I love my wife, but I've been sleeping around, and my kid is on dope, and I'm in debt, man." And, whatever. I just try to think of extreme situations. But they just share, hard stuff. And there's a reason for that. It's not just for the mental aspect of it, like, oh, we need a therapist, and the priest is a free therapist. But God knows that we're body and soul. I mean, he made us for Pete's sake. So he knows that the spiritual, psychological, emotional side of us must have a physical element to it. So therefore, just simply sitting in silence, for example, we were talking about that earlier, will not fix all of our problems. We have to have a communal element. And so God gives us these representatives as leaders in the church, his ministers, to be the ones who stand in his place, who speak the words for him, so that the people in their brokenness can have that contact with the Lord through us. So, yeah.
Right. So one topic that I wanted to talk about, and this will probably get us really into the weeds, predestiny versus free will. It's one of those things that's always hotly debated, at least in my church, because you've got one group of people that, God knows absolutely everything, and he knows the hair on your head. And then you got other people that believe in free will, and God doesn't know how the painting is going to be. He doesn't know how the picture is going to be painted in the end. How do we make sense of this?
It's both and. God's foreknowledge of everything ensures our free will. So let me just use hunting, for example. We were talking about turkey hunting a little while ago. Evolutionary sciences, or like the evolution of animals, has determined that turkeys, they're born, they hatch, or those little poults, they grow up, and then every spring they go through this breeding season. The gobblers gobble, the hens dance around and try to get away from those guys harassing them, and they do. It's turkey hunting season. We know what that is. So science has sort of has a foreknowledge, almost in some ways predestined the evolution of these birds to live out this way. But every bird acts differently. Mm-hmm. So it's the science of this evolution that is of these animals that puts them into heat. I don't know what you call it for birds, but puts them in heat at this time of year, breeding season. But then every bird is going to act differently to the way you call them and work with them. And it's kind of like that with the Lord and us. He knows. He has foreknowledge of everything that's going to go on. And that's what ensures our free will in those moments to act in accordance with his grace and not against it. So that's probably as simply as I can put it without making it too complicated. God's foreknowledge doesn't predestine us, doesn't tie our hands, but his foreknowledge allows our free will. It's sort of like he puts the bumpers up on the road way before we get down the road so that we stay in the lane.
Right.
And within that lane, there's a lot of, you can swerve all over the place. You can crash into the bumper. But, as long as you're living in a state of grace and with the Lord, you're going to stay on the road.
Right. Well, and I just, the predestiny thing kind of worries me because I think a lot of times that's an excuse for people to just be a piece of shit. You know what I mean? It's like, well, God made me and this is what I am and I'm going to run around on my wife or take it to the way extreme and, I'll be Charles Manson could use predestiny. Well, God made me in his image and this is just what I do. I coerce people into killing people. So it can take ownership away from the person for their actions, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. And they're just lying to themselves. No human being in their right mind would agree with that, whenever they say that. But they can say that just to make you think that but there's, any person in the right mind, they know that that's not right. And we know that's not right either. It's, it's this lack of ownership.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. Well, God made me, so I can do that. I can be this. This is how he made me.
Yeah. Jesus also told us to take up his cross and follow him. He didn't say, do whatever the hell you want. He said, follow me, know? So this aspect of God's grace and the freedom that he's given us freedom to do the right thing, to do good, not freedom to do bad. And so anytime we do bad, that's actually not freedom. That's not freedom. That's a disordered human action, which is like it's the opposite of freedom. Mm-hmm. It's absurdity,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I mean, you could even talk about that with like homosexuality. It's like, well, God, he made me, so this is just what I am. Because you're not taking ownership. Mm-hmm. And like you said, you're not picking up the cross and living in a godly manner. So I don't know, that's just but I've never heard it put like that, because I've never heard it put and both. You know what I mean? It's always one or the other. Either we've got total free will or we've got total predestiny, but I've never heard it put in a manner of, well, it's actually both. So that makes a lot of sense in my mind.
That's been a big thing for me this last year. It can be both. I was going through, I had just a really rough thing happen here at the church, and it was just really bothering me. It was really frustrating me. So I was talking to another priest, a good friend of mine, who's an avid duck hunter. This guy duck hunts like a fool. So he and I went some this year. I was just complaining about this stuff going on and just trying to make some sense of it, of why I was right and so the person was wrong. And he was like, well, both can be right. He said both can be true. Mm-hmm. He said both can be true. And that really that broke a lot of stuff down. A lot of these walls I had in my mind, it broke them down, and it gave me a lot of freedom. And there's been so many situations when I've been since then, when I would be in this moment, in this thing where these two extremes were happening, and this polarized society we're living in, it says it's got to be either or. But I keep going back to what he said. He said, well, both can be true. And I've used it in counseling. I've used it in my own personal life. I've used it in ministry and like preaching. But if we do that, like it gives us a lot of freedom, and it helps us to stay humble. It helps us to grow. That's what Jesus always did. When the scribes and Pharisees would try to say, hey, I'm trying to think of an example, like taxes. He was like, hey, should we pay money to Caesar or what? Pay our taxes or to God? You say give tithes, but also Caesar's saying this. And then it says, give to Caesar what Caesar, and to the Lord what is the Lord's. It's like, it's not either or. It can be both and. So anyhow, just for whatever that's worth, next time you're in a moment of crisis or like a frustration, just think of like, well, how can I reconcile these? And see that it could be both.
Yeah.
Both can be true.
Boy, I wish he'd have never said that about taxes. Our government has taken that way to the extreme.
It's ridiculous.
Yeah, I'm not saying like the percentage that they hit us with is right. I agree. We got we got some swamp work to do on that.
Yeah, you hope so. So we'll start wrapping up here because we've gone an hour and a half now. What is your favorite book hold on, before we get to there. I asked a preacher one time, do you think that there would ever be a situation where the Bible would add information? Like, let's say they find a tablet, they verify it, carbon dated or however they date it, it is legit, and we know it's legit. Do you think that they would ever, under the right situation, add something to the Bible?
No. Through the scriptures that we have as of now, it's been established not just upon historical fact, but also upon tradition, which is very important. It's what's been used for these years. They may find something from 2,000 years ago or even older from the Old Testament that's a real historical document, and they do that. They've done that in the last number of years. But it was not a key part of the living tradition of these faith communities for the last 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 years. Therefore, it would not be deemed worthy or necessary enough to go into the body of the Word of God, into the Scriptures. It could be an important historical text, but it would not make up the corpus of the Bible. So that would kind of be the short answer for that.
Are there any books out there that that you have studied that you think? What was the book with text? I can't remember what it was. It was one of the lost books of the Bible. What's a popular one? It'll come to me. I can't remember the name off the top of my head.
There's a few of them. Gospel of Thomas, Gospel of Peter. Those are two of them.
I think it might have been Thomas.
I think it was Thomas.
Do you study any of that, or do you kind of stay away from that?
Sure. No, I have. I mean, there's a role of history, and there is a reason for studying those different ones, the different, the different sort of, historical books that were from those times. And some of them, though, are not part of the Bible. They were found later, and they weren't added to the Bible because they're not completely in line with Christianity. One of them, maybe in the Gospel of Thomas, like Jesus gets pissed at one of his friends, and so he kills a bird or something, and then like freezes his buddy or something. I don't remember exactly what it was, and it just like God would never do that. Jesus would never take anger out and in a fit of frustration like a kid, because that's totally against his nature. So some of them, they'll never make the cut just because they don't have all the truth. But the short answer, yeah, I've studied those things. In seminary, I got a specialization in the church fathers. So this is all the early Christian writers. Let's shut this door. There's some people out there talking. And so I studied a lot of those works when I was in school.
So they had so you could study those things at the Vatican?
Oh yeah.
Well, that's interesting. Then I would that would interest me quite a bit.
Most of it's available online too.
Is it? I'll have to check that out then. Last question: if you could only study if there was only one book from the Bible that you would recommend to somebody, what would it be? You got to pick one.
Andy, if I have to pick one, I'd say the Gospel of Mark.
Gospel of Mark, that's the one.
Yeah, it's got the words of Jesus, the words in red. It's shortest. I don't want to say the simplest because all of them are very complex, but it's it's probably the oldest gospel, and Mark supposedly had a direct connection to St. Peter. There are even some that would say St. Peter wrote the Gospel of Mark. I don't know. I don't think that's true, though. I don't know if that's true. I don't think it is. But he was at least a disciple of Peter, at least part of that group. So he would have been very close friends with somebody who was very close friends with Jesus. It's not full of a lot of real high theology or mystical stuff, so it's pretty straightforward miracles. So that would probably be the Gospel of Mark. Man, if you gave me a couple of other options, the Psalms would be number 2.
Yeah.
And then I just recently started rereading Proverbs. And just right now in my life, like, man, they're hitting. Like, every verse is just like a zinger. I'm like, damn, dude, I got to get my life together. I'm a loser.
So, real quick, talk to me about Ezekiel, because there's mention of a spacecraft in there. If you read it, it sounds a little bit extraterrestrial. Mm-hmm. Is there a possibility for this?
For what? Aliens?
Yes. Space vehicles.
Yeah. Sure. I mean, I don't see why not. There's no proof or anything that we have now that can show that they exist, or that I'm aware of. Maybe there is, but there's nothing to say that the existence of aliens would be an immoral thing, or like it would be impossible with God.
Right.
Just be like another animal. Be like another animal that we find. Be like find another little microbiome at the floor of the sea, or something at the top of the Himalayas. There's just another planet.
Yeah.
It'd be weird as hell, dude, if like one landed in the front yard. It'd be kind of cool. I'd be afraid. I'd want to touch it and I'd climb in it, but at the same time, I'd be nervous. Like Men in Black comes to mind.
I'm staying away from it. 9 times. I'm never going. Not in a million years. Spaceship lands out here at the lodge, I'm booking it and running. I'm not investigating anymore. But
I'd say, do you know Jesus Christ? Are you open to hunting? And
can we be friends?
That's probably it. What kind of music do you listen to?
Right. Yeah.
They used to always say when they landed, they were going to say, "Take me to your leader."
Yeah,
they would be pretty damn disappointed on that trip this days.
Yeah, we don't want to do that. Well, listen, Father, it's been a lot of fun. I'm glad that we were able to get you back on here and kind of hit some of the stuff that we missed in the first one. Like I said, you got an invitation out here this fall. If you want to come out here, make the trek, we can shoot some geese and have some fun out here. Open invitation. You got my number, so just don't be a stranger. If you ever need anything, we'd love to have you on and here a couple months and do this all over again. You're a lot of fun to talk to. You're easy to talk to.
That'll be fun. You likewise. It's fun talking to you guys, and come out here to Arkansas too and chase some ducks with us. And, yeah, we got a couple little holes out here.
Maybe one day.
Where the ducks will be.
Maybe one day. Well, keep doing the good work out there. And like I said, you ever need anything, you got my number.
God bless you guys.
Thank you,
sir.
Padre, and God bless you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Father Gadberry,
Yep.
I have got to pee. So I'm going to go do that.
All right. Peace. Goodbye.
Love
God
you.
bless.
Bye. Watch for deer.
I have time to run.
Check out our sponsors. Go check out Dirty Duck Coffee, Shin Gear, Looking Glass Podcast, Lucky Duck, Mallard Bay, Dive Bomb Ministries, Pacific Calls, Boss Shot Shells, MLR Graphics, Ducks Unlimited, Double T British Kennels, Mossberg, Stanfield Outfitters, Hemp Hill Farm, and Alpha Outdoor Specialties.